Alright, we're back to it. 6.2, we're going to do a day 1 and day 2. Today we're going to be talking about parallelograms. So a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both sides, opposite sides parallel. So one thing to note here is the symbolism. We've been using this for a while, but they're usually two slanted lines just showing they're parallel. Also notice that they're using arrows to denote which lines are parallel. So these two are going to be parallel to each other, and then this is going to be parallel to each other. One thing to note here as well, since we are talking about parallel lines, is their angles. So these two angles here will be congruent, and then we'll see later on that these two angles will be congruent. So we have some properties of parallelograms. For one thing, opposite sides are always congruent. That's by definition, and so we have just some markings here. So these are congruent and parallel. So we also have that these two are congruent to each other also. So the abbreviation is opposite sides of, you just draw a little rectangle on the side and then you say congruent. So we could make a congruent statement. ML is congruent to JK and JM is congruent to JL. Similarly, like I spoke about earlier, the opposite angles will also be congruent. So this angle here will be congruent to that angle, and this angle here will be congruent to this angle. Another property of parallelograms is the fact that when you have these angles here, so let's say this angle and this angle, when you put them together, you're going to get a linear pair or consecutive angles, and they are considered to be equal to 180 degrees. Alright, in the next one, if we have a rectangle, which a rectangle is a little bit more specialized form, a parallelogram, that these angles are all equal to 90 degrees. All of the other properties still apply, so this side will be congruent to this side, and this side will be congruent to that side. Alright, so we'll do a few examples here. A real world example. Use properties of parallelograms. Use the image to answer the questions about problems A through C. So let's take a look at this. It says, in construction, you have that space A, B, C, D. So I'm just going to draw it down here. Suppose that we have the measure of angle B is 32 degrees. So I'm going to say B right here is 32 degrees. Every time I use Smart Notebook, I always get this random line. Get rid of that. B equals 32. And we have that CD equals 80. So that's this line here. Highlight this. CD is equal to 80. So length. And BC, another length, is equal to 15. So find AD. So in this case, they want us to know, recognize that opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. Therefore, if I'm tasked to find AD, AD is going to be the same as the other side, so AD will be 15. Similarly, we're going to look at the next problem. Suppose we know, again, that measure of angle B is again 32 degrees. They want us to find the measure of angle C. Okay, so remember how we talked about B plus C here has to equal 180 degrees. So we'll just substitute in there. So 32 plus angle C, which we're trying to find out, is going to be equal to 180. Subtract 32 from both sides and we get C is equal to 148. Alright, same situation here. We have measure of angle B again is equal to 32 degrees. They want us to find the measure of angle. Well, we know from properties of parallelograms that these two angles will be congruent, so the measure of angle D will also be 32 degrees. Alright, here is another example. I kind of changed it up here because some of your homework problems look like this. So in this example, I put a 3x up in that corner, so I'd like you to do that as well. So when we go to find x and all the other parts of this problem, we'll start with the fact that the angle, let's just highlight this, this angle here, which is angle C, and angle A, those are going to be the same because they're opposite sides of a parallelogram. So we'll start with 3x is equal to 36, divide both sides, and we get x is equal to 12. So we can do that. It wasn't specifically asked in this question, but there are some like that in your homework. So if that's the case, let's see if we can find AB. So AB is this line here, and we know that that is going to be congruent to that side. So AB is going to equal 30. Measure of angle C. Well, measure of angle C is the same as the measure of angle A. So the measure of angle C is equal to 36 degrees. And again, now we're going to be looking at angle D here. We saw from the previous example that D with or added together with that other angle should equal 180 degrees. So if we then subtract 36 from both sides, we get D is equal to 144. So that's the end of this lesson. I'm just going to check. Yep. To next time, we're going to be talking about solving more complicated equations with parallelograms.